we'll do Banshee. We'll keep the laser rifle as well. And then we'll do a defense mission, an early defense mission. So someone can take this.
I'll give it a shot.
All right. So the controls. R1 is melee. You hold it to do a charged melee. Shooting this is aiming. This is zooming in. This is shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Square is reload.
Okay.
Circle is interaction, and it'll tell you those things. Triangle is to switch between your weapons.
Okay.
X is to jump. And I was doing some crazy parkour stuff. You're not gonna have to worry about that as much in the defense missions.
Okay.
And then this is looking around. This is moving. So
okay.
We'll put you on.
Let's do it.
I need circus. I'm being selfish, so we're gonna farm some circuits on Venus. We'll do it on kill cam.
Okay.
Let's give it a shot.
I feel like I should play a different game because
That's
there's too many controls. Like I never remember all of that.
That's fine.
Dan, in your personal opinion, where do you see gender in video games right now as a trend? Because this one doesn't look too. I mean, in terms of like gender neutral, it's for video games currently. It's actually not too bad. It's like there's no huge distinction.
Yeah.
But do you see this as a growing trend in video games, or this is just an outlier?
That's a really good question. So one of the things I wanted to show you with the other games we'll play. So Battlefield's another one that I have. In terms of AAA games, I think we'll start seeing female protagonists more frequently. When I was actually before you came over here, I was getting ready and I looked for a comprehensive list of games that had female protagonists. And when I was looking for that, I found several articles that actually popped up and said we're still a long ways from seeing a gay lead in a video game.
That's interesting.
Right. Very interesting, right? So here's the interesting thing. I'm going to have a spoiler warning a little bit for one thing, but there have been gay video game characters, like arguably people like will be like, oh yeah, he was gay because of this, or she was lesbian because of this. And Michael, you can correct me on terminology whenever you want.
No, definitely I will.
I'm not an expert, but
no, it's okay.
But I'm definitely like the point of this is for all of us to learn, right? So,
of course, definitely.
So Mass Effect is one example. Are all of you familiar with Mass Effect?
Yes.
So this game itself might actually feel kind of akin to Mass Effect, but Mass Effect, you could form relationships with the characters.
What does that mean? Enemies are coming?
Yeah, exactly.
No.
So you want to protect. You see, like in the minimap on the top left.
Oh god.
You want to go back to the exclamation mark, and defend it. I mean, you can attack them too.
Oh wait, okay. Defend that.
Yeah, it's up there on the platform. But yeah, in Mass Effect, you could form relationships, and what's funny is the interspecies thing did not make people feel uncomfortable. It's the fact that your character Shepard, male or female, you get to choose the gender of the sex of your character, male or female. You could be in gay relationships, homosexual relationships, but that made people feel really uncomfortable in the gaming sphere, which I thought was a little interesting. But at the same time, it makes a lot of sense because a lot of people argue that the gaming industry is maturing, but that mindset still hasn't matured yet. Because right now, the huge bulk of the AAA consumption audience are males 18 through 40. Now it's like closer to 40 because we have these older gamers, and though they might be more accepting of those in social context, in video games, they're just not used to it.
Yeah.
And you also have a very vocal minority. It's very possible that the majority of gamers either don't care or are all for it. But there's a very vocal minority that spoke out against it. Yet, hands together for BioWare and EA for sticking by what they believe and still publishing that. But to your point, yeah, a lot of independent games are having the trend of having female leads. We'll go through the list more later if we get the time. But the most recent AAA game that had a female protagonist, granted the portrayal, like the delivery of that character wasn't the strongest, but she stayed true to who her character was in the previous game. Her name is Lightning. She was Final Fantasy 13, and she is the only protagonist, and I would say the only protagonist in her newest game, Final Fantasy 13 Lightning Returns. In Final Fantasy 13 1, this is where it gets a little confusing. She was a lead protagonist, but her personality was often overshadowed by the strong personality of Snow, the male protagonist. Now, granted, Snow is voiced by Troy Baker, and he's a really solid guy.
Yeah.
Like, that's not... I don't put any of this necessarily on the voice actors that are involved with this.
Right,
More
right.
on the writers and the producers. But they did give Lightning a lot of like, equivalent, if not more, like, screen time than Snow. And because basically they're like, yes, Lightning is really who we want the gamers to identify with. It's just up to, you know, who do you decide to play as is going to affect that.
Exactly.
And you know, some of these smaller indie games, I can't remember the name of one of them, but Gone Home, I think the protagonist is female. Outlast is a horror game, and you play a female. Now that's a little different. I think that's actually more sticking to traditional gender roles in terms of this chick is stuck in a scary ass abandoned shack, and she has to find a way to survive longer than whoever else is there. I think that's closer to how we normally portray women in media. But still, in a video game, you know, again, it's
still uncharted territory for.
Yeah. And part of it is these bigger publishers can't take the same financial risks that independent developers can make.
Right.
At the end of the day, video game it's still a business, which holds it back tremendously. In some aspects of creative freedom, whereas these indie developers, you know, they can do whatever they want.
And you need to respect. You need to respond to that age demographic they're fighting, which is 18 to 40.
Yeah.
And you know.
Now I think that what I think is that the 18 to I would argue that the 18 to like late 20s crowd of that demographic, they're probably more comfortable with that change in gaming than the older. Not saying that they're again, it's not the social thing. It's just the experience of video games themselves.
Exactly.
And earlier we talked about Lara Croft, and now a lot of people got upset at Lara Croft's E3 reveal because in the demo they showed, she was fighting for her life. She's surviving on this island. This is how she's shaped into the badass Lara Croft.
Okay, so it's a prequel, basically.
It's like it's an origin series, origin story. Now, a lot of people were upset at the fact that, understandably so, they were upset at a particular scene where it looked like she was being sexually assaulted. Now, part of creating an immersive experience is this is just how I would express it. Is part of having an immersive experience is providing realistic scenarios of what would happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you are the only female on an island with pirates that are already bad people, you can't not address that.
Exactly.
Now she kills the guy before anything happens, but a lot of people are like, oh, well, it kind of looked like this, and other people are like, no, they wouldn't do that. But the truth is, I think they intentionally meant to be like, look, we're addressing this kind of shyly, but we're addressing it because, like, we know that this is a part of.
It happens in our society.
It happens, and we can't just ignore it, right? And I mean, if you want to stop me at any point, let me know. I was going to move on to. We were talking about homosexual leads in video games.
Yeah.
Right. Now, this is interesting because, so spoiler alert. If you have not played Last of Us, I know none of you have.
No.
But that's okay. I don't think anyone intend to. But the DLC, I haven't played it myself, but it's a point of discussion with a gay character, or possibly gay character in the story. So, Last of Us follows Joel and Ellie as they survive this really messed up post kind of apocalyptic world. It's not like any other apocalyptic game that you might have played. But then in the DLC, it's called Left Behind. It's sort of a look into Ellie's story prior to meeting with Joel, and she has this really close friend. Her name is Riley, I believe. And there's a scene in the DLC. Again, I watched the spoiler cast because I don't plan on purchasing it. Where they kiss, right? And a lot of people were like, it wasn't outrage so much as they were asked the question: is she gay, or is she just caught up in the moment? And it's funny, and I really applaud the voice actor for this. I can't believe I can't remember her name. But she had an interview with Greg Miller from IGN, and he asked this. He asked her straight up, "Is Ellie gay?" And she was like, me and the director had discussions about this. But to me personally, and I'm sorry if this is not how he sees it, I don't think it matters.
Mm-hmm.
Let that sit for a second,
Yeah.
because I thought what she said next was even more impressive. Was she says that, to me, what's more important is that as a society we move to the point where someone coming out isn't this big thing, whether to be critiqued or celebrated. It's just something that happens. Like, it's not something that requires unusual attention, in other words, is how she was trying to put it. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting that, how do I say this? That at least she opened it up for discussion through this game, because like movies and video games, I'm guessing too, this applies to, we all kind of look for ourselves in games, you know? And if we see things represented in video games and practically all the media that we watch, I think it's going to become much easier for us to accept it in real life. So the fact that more characters are seemingly looking like they're LGBT within the video game industry, I think that that's definitely a sign that we're progressing in society. But at the same time, I also have to critique it as well.
Yeah.
The portrayals of the different characters, how is it that they're being portrayed? Like, what is it that they're emphasizing? What types of homosexual relationships are they portraying? Because at the same time, we can be reproducing those same notions by representing them in video games. So at the same time, it's a good thing, but I also see it as, I'm also a little critical and skeptical at the same time.